So you know what it's time for? It's time for another episode of Das Allroad, while I'm hanging out waiting for my daughter's school bus to appear. Luckily, thanks to Royal Mail, all of the components I need to build the new stereo system for our car have shown up and arrived. Now, I made the fatal mistake of opening the box already, and my wife chastised me saying, your loving fans want to see the unboxing of everything. So we're going to do that once I get back home. But to start, the first thing you need to do before starting any stereo install is to make sure the CD drive is empty. Now here, it gets more exciting because I don't even remember how to do this. I got to go through settings, eject CD-ROM. I got lucky. Because you don't want this stuff in there. Here we have the original United Kingdom Ireland nav CD. But I think I have some CDs in the back in the CD changer. Now, what good is early 2000s stereo technology without an in-car CD changer? And you see we have our magic toolkit, which is all there, and we have our CD changer. Eject the magazine. It's thinking about it. There it goes. Clean that bad boy out. Additionally, while I was poking around and playing with the car, I found the original Audi branded part number. You can see it here. Cargo net. This is a real neat thing. You see it's got a nice little hook here, and there's 4 D-rings across the whole back of the car, and they're the perfect size for snapping into the D-ring and not losing. See, it fits in, it's nice and pretty and looks good. Isn't that wonderful? See, now with the CD removed, it's mad at me. It wants me to put the CD back in. So we can do to the next step of disassembly here. While I'm waiting for my daughter to show up, we can sit in silence on the way back from the bus stop. Is I can actually take this whole thing out and we can see what we're looking at. This is really easy since I already sprung it loose and you saw me pop it out before. So it's a little repeat from last time. And you can see looking down here in the back, we got a couple of things hooked in here. I also have my USB tuner for hooking up my phone, but everything really just snaps in and pops in and out real easily. You know, we dealt with the GPS antenna before and how that fits in there. Come on, focus. There we go. You see that and how everything else fits in as well. So I'm going to pop those out real quick and we'll get to see what a free unit looks like. Free Willy, free unit. That's not this type of video. One of the things you can see is this fancy electrical connector here. You see that blue piece, that's actually the lock, and that'll swivel out and let you pull that out. This connector doesn't get reused. This is the CAN bus connector, and that's what lets steering wheel controls work, and it also gives the display in the dash of what radio station or the directions for the GPS. Unfortunately, with aftermarket stuff, you lose that functionality in a V-Dub or Audi or Seat or Skoda or whatever the hell else they make. So this is how it all looks disassembled. It's nothing too crazy. You have 3 connectors here. 2 of them seem to be fairly standard for speakers. Actually, these are the 2 that are that. And then this one's a little bit more Audi specific. I do have a adapter harness that'll plug into all 3 of these, and it puts a standard ISO output. The problem is the standard ISO output isn't going to work with my cheap Chinese unit. I'm going to have to splice into what they gave me. And then there's also this bad boy, which is our CAN bus, which we aren't going to be using. It's kind of sad. And then, of course, before I drop it, is we have an antenna. The antenna's got an extra cable on it, and I believe that's supposed to have a tab on it for a ground. And unfortunately, this isn't there, but I have tabs and things and electrical things at home that I can use to put a tab on it so it works correctly. I don't know if the new unit has a tab on it or not, though. So part of the reason I wanted to go with the aftermarket stereo, you know, usually I'd be okay with the radio feed, the FM transmitter for the iPod functionality of the phone. The problem is that's the nearest cigarette lighter connection, so I have to have the ashtray open. And when I shift, I mash my fingers into that ashtray, and that's no fun. Plus, there's cables everywhere, and it's generally just kind of ugly. So we got to change it up a little bit, and that's what we're going to do. The other thing we're going to do is I'm going to add a different cigarette lighter setup for the power for my dash cam, I'm going to feed that off of the ground and the ignition on for the radio. So every time I turn the car on and off, my magic next base dash cam up here will come on and do what it's supposed to do. So one of the other things with the setup I'm doing, even though right now there's a big gaping hole there, kind of like your mom, but one of the things I'm doing is because it's Apple CarPlay, I need to run a wire for the Apple, for the phone, a lightning connector. And I can do it one of two ways. I can run it from here into the glove box, or I can run it from here through the console into down here under the glove box, or under the armrest, not the glove box. I'd rather do that because it's easier for me to take my phone with me when I come and go. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of surgery here on the center console, and my handy dandy iPad cable or iPod cable or Apple Lightning cable or whatever you call it can run between there. So I can do a little bit of that while we wait. With a tiny bit of elbow grease, the shifting bezel, it pops right up, so I can easily feed it under there. And behind the climate controls, this center panel here, which is an auxiliary panel, it's supposed to have an extra thing for your navigation. That can pop up, I can feed through there. And finally over in here, I'm probably going to have to get a drill out or something to drill a little hole in here so the iPod cable can pop right out. There it goes. So we're going to reenact the unboxing because I accidentally opened the box without having it filmed. My lovely wife is playing the cameraman tonight, or camera lady, I should say. But this is the box. It has this wonderful Chinese writing on it. I have no idea what it says. My daughter's taking Mandarin. She might be able to tell me. So we open it up. And what do we have? We have wires, which are important. These, it looks like it has a lot of stuff for external video in. That could be useful if I ever do a backup camera. This is the wiring for the radio, and it even has stuff in both English and Chinese, which is kind of nice. Typically, your purples and whites like this, those are all for audio and speakers. The rest of these are more like illumination and power, and then, of course, ground. We have the USB cables, which are important, since you have to have the USB plugged in order for Apple CarPlay to work. And finally, there's another wire here. This is another video in. This is actually specifically for a backup camera. These, I guess, I've had an external DVD or something exciting. And then here's the unit itself. It's a 2-DIN unit, but it pops out and has this big display on it. So you see back here, this is about the size of a 2-DIN unit and fits in your dash. And actually, to do trapezoid this side up. And it's actually an exact fit for the A6, C5 Audi platform. I kind of got this on a hunch. It looked like it might fit. I got out I have a bezel that you need to have anyway to support this, because just a standard 2-DIN you can't support it. Let me go fetch that and I'll show you real quick. So this is the bezel front unit. This is how it'll sit in the car, just like this. It's kind of trapezoid shape. And then this pops in and fits in perfectly like this. A little, nudge below, a little nudge above, but it can still get to the rest of the accessories in the car. Yeah. So the wiring harness, it plugs in. It's actually color-coded with a brown and a black, and then another part that goes into the Audi goodies. Of course, as I said before, we don't get to hook up the CAN bus. And then, of course, there's the antenna. Our antenna actually had a different adapter on it for the Audi head unit, but this is a standard piece, so I popped that off, and this is ready to go. This is the wiring harness that came with the unit. You can see it's got pretty standard stuff, your power, and then the other pretty colors here, which I've taken the ends off of, that's going to be for all the speakers. And then there's a couple of others that'll hook in. One of them is called illumination. This is ILL. That controls the brightness, but I have to figure out which one of these is illumination. It'll probably be the orange one, because they try to keep the colors consistent, even though this is a German car, and this is the finest in Chinese slave labor. So what I need to do now is I need to strip these wires so we can put them together. I can put them together with this. I got to go fetch my electrical tape, because it can't do a soldering iron out here. and get it all set up the way it needs to be. We're going to start soldering tonight. You can see I have the wires twisted together, and then I just add the solder to it so it sticks together. And I got to do this over and over and over again. So there's my ugly soldering job. You'll see for the positive and ignition on, you can see here with the red, I actually spliced in an extra wire because that is going to feed an extra cigarette lighter connection, which will feed the USB connection for the camera, my dash cam. So yeah, it is speaker wire, but electrons are electrons and it should just magically work. Now to break out some electrical tape because I don't have any heat shrink tubing and make these things nice and insulated. So it is a little bit dark, but with everything soldered up and ready to go, all plugged in. Got the keys in the ignition. Let's see if we can rock and roll here. And it comes online with a Geely logo. I think we can fix that because this isn't a Geely, this is an Audi, of course. It's up and running. Better turn that off before the copyright guys get me. But apparently it's working, so we're in good shape. In this photo, you can see side by side the old nav unit versus the new nav unit. They're almost approximately the exact same size. What I did is, you see I have my drill out. I had to drill through the fascia into the back of the unit. The back of the unit had a few stud holes in it, so all I had to do was put 4 screws in, and it held pretty good. Here's the setup as it is installed. You can see the radio displays, and here's a quick display of what it looks like in Spotify. Now there's 2 major faults here. The first is when I listen to terrestrial FM, I can't have CarPlay active at the same time. That means I can't listen to things like BBC Oxford when I have things like Waze up and running. That's not too bad because I can listen to Spotify or any podcast or anything else. The other problem is if something like Waze is up and running, I actually have to drop out of Waze and switch to Spotify to fast forward between the existing track and the next track. It's kind of annoying. I think future releases of CarPlay or future releases of the app will actually fix that.